Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm very pleased to be joined by Paul Singh of BSP Holdings in Nottingham for a very special edition of CEO Talks. We'll find out about Paul's life and his career, his business, how he started out, and we hope he'll share his experiences and give us some advice for our viewers in terms of business and life generally. Paul, welcome to Sikh Channel. Thank you very much for inviting us to your home here in Nottingham. Perhaps we can start with your early life. Can you tell us about where you were born and where you grew up?
I was born in East London, mid-1950s. We'd arrived, obviously, not long after the Second World War had finished. So London, especially East London, was quite run down. Yes. So my father then, we moved to Bristol for a short time, and then to Cardiff for a short time, and then we ended up in Nottingham.
That's great.
Which I'm quite happy about.
And you spent most of your life in Nottingham. Yeah. This is very much home for you. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your father? Because your father came to the UK in the 1940s as one of the first Sikhs to arrive.
My grandfather, Sant Atta Singh, he was in what is now Pakistan in Nagano Sahib.
Sorry, your grandfather was known as Sant Atta Singh.
Yeah.
And why is that?
My grandfather, who unfortunately I never met, he was into Sikh in a big way. He spent all his life around the Gurdwara at Patti Sahib Gurdwara, where he virtually ran the Gurdwara from what I've been told by the family. And my father came over here for education in the 40s. Then partition happened after the Second World War, and obviously the country was in turmoil, especially our community. Yes. Was it was a very turbulent time for
That's right. Because your family were caught on the wrong side of partition. They were in what's now Pakistan.
Yeah. That's right. So they moved. My father's family, they all moved to Amritsar from in 1947. So my father was over here. He went back to get married, and then my sister, just because she was born in India, she's the only one who was born in India. The rest of us were either born in London or Nottingham.
That's great.
So this is where we've ended up.
And your father was a very educated man, a very proud Sardar.
Yeah.
We've seen his portrait. He looks very handsome. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your father? Because it's quite unusual to be educated in those days.
My father, there was 4 brothers, no sisters, and they were all very highly educated. My Dayaji was a doctor who studied in India. He was an eye specialist, and he had the surgery was actually, which I had the pleasure of visiting after he passed away, in Amritsar, which is still there. And my father was unfortunately caught up at the wrong time, and he didn't finish his studies because of partition and circumstances. So then we get married, and it's then obviously difficult in those times to carry on your education. Yeah.
So your parents moved to the UK in the 50s. And can you tell us about the early years? Was it a real struggle? Was it very hard times?
It was, the country, obviously, the war had finished, and 2 wars had finished in a short period. So the country was pretty bankrupt, as we know. We're talking about England. India was probably worse because the British had been there for 200 years and didn't leave a lot when they left. That's from what I've read, in my opinion.
Yes.
And then it was a difficult time in the country anyway for Asians over here at that time. It was tough times, but nobody had money, so everybody was virtually at the same.
That's right. That's right.
Whereas now, money's not important, but a lot of people do think it is important. But personally, I don't think it's that important. But in the 60s, even the 70s, it was still, when you look at old films now, everybody was still at a pretty even level in our communities.
And can you tell us about your school days? Because you went to school here in Nottingham and you were the only Asian or Indian person in the entire school. Did you suffer a lot because of that?
Yeah, I went to school with 600 boys, and I was the only Asian in the whole school. And I didn't have any bad experiences whatsoever. And talked to my brothers and sisters, and they were all probably of the same. It was maybe we just we're a big family. I think Sikhs have got a good habit of mixing really well.
That's right.
Whether it's in the streets where you live or the school where you go to, or and I think that probably held us in good stead.
And you're the eldest. You're the eldest of
eldest of the brothers
of 7 siblings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had a large family.
Yeah.
And did you feel a lot of responsibility as the eldest?
Yeah, you do in our community. You know, you have to attend all the functions. I can remember attending, especially with my parents, with mum and dad, the number of times I've been to funerals and I don't even know whose funeral it was. Yeah, but that's how our community works. So, and as the eldest of the brothers, you do have certain responsibilities, but I think that is probably unique to our culture. I don't think that is
right
in the English culture. Yeah.
And your father, what expectations did he have of you? Because your father was very educated himself. What did he expect you to achieve?
I think I'm pretty sure my father would have preferred, as all the boys and the girls have gone down the education route rather than the business route. When I left school, I did actually have a job at an insurance company as an underwriter, where I was there for 5 years, and my brother Stephen, who was training to be an accountant. So it was quite, but that held the experience of working with professionals gave me a lot of confidence of when we went into business. And I think Stephen, with he's always been very good with figures, so it's quite a good combination.
Absolutely. Yeah. And your parents were very well connected to the Gurdwara in Nottingham. They did a lot of service there. Yeah. And you spent a lot of your time at the Gurdwara as you grew up.
I think the Gurdwara probably goes back to my grandfather in Nikana Sahib. My father and my mother was the same. You know, always, whether we went to the Gurdwara or not, we was always doing our fair share for the community.
That's great.
And then I think the responsibility, when they passed away, was handed over to my sisters. Are quite connected to their brothers. All, you know, my son is like does a lot to say about the Gurdwara.
That's great.
You know, we find it quite rewarding. Yeah.
And can you tell us about how you started out in business? Because you were very young. How old were you, and how did it happen by accident?
It was partly by accident. It was I used to play football at the age of 20, 21 at quite a high level, and I played in a big tournament in London at the indoor Wembley Arena, and we'd won the competition, and there was pictures in the papers. And when I got back to work, one of the guys who'd been working there for 40 years says, "Oh, we won this trophy 40 years ago, and I'll bring you a photo of it in a few days' time to show me." And when I looked at the photo of what he looked like when he was playing football and what he looked like working 40 years in an office, I thought, I think I need to get out of this place.
That gave you a bit of a shock.
It gave me a bit of a shock. Yes. And then, so we decided to explore other avenues, and an opportunity arose to buy a shop in Nottingham off another Sikh family. And our parents, my mother and father, gave us the backing and the support financially to go and buy this.
And that's in the early 80s?
It's 70s.
In the 70s?
Yeah, 1976.
76, that's your first retail shop.
Yeah.
And can you tell us about that experience? How did you work? Did you work day and night?
We worked I think we didn't regard it as work because we was enjoying what we was doing, and I think that was probably, it was all exciting. It was new. We was, we then, all of a sudden we started travelling around London and Manchester doing business, whereas before we'd just been, as kids, we'd always been in Nottingham, not travelled anywhere. Never used to go on holiday, etc. But nobody did. So it was exciting times. So we used to work whenever we needed to work, but we was enjoying it. So.
And it was a family business. You had the support of your older brothers at that time.
Even the parents helped at the time. The other brothers, younger sisters wasn't married then. They used to help in the shops.
Yes.
And in the early years, we grew rapidly.
And what do you put that down to, that early success when you grew from that one shop and you went into several retail sites? Because
we didn't have expensive habits, because we hadn't seen our eyes hadn't seen expensive clothes, houses, lifestyle, holidays. So the money just used to go back into the pot, and you'd buy another shop and another shop, and it happened in the first few years. It happened quite rapidly.
And how did the retail business end up? What was the height of the retail business?
The height of the business is when we had shops from Dundee down to Plymouth around the whole country, and they were quite exciting times.
And how many shops did you have?
There were 30 shops in the main shopping centres of the whole country.
Was that very difficult to manage? Because it's a cash business, a lot of it. How did you manage?
Yeah, a lot of it was cash. Yes. It was difficult. In those days, we was one of the early ones to have a computerised system, which is not how computers are today. But we was a big family, so we used to spread around. Yes. Somebody would look after the north of England, somebody would look after the Midlands, somebody would look after the south. The central depots for buying, and then we'd be flying around the world importing the stock. So we was very early importing directly and retailing and not.
So you were very innovative and enterprising in that you source your goods and your product, not just from wholesalers in the UK, but you went abroad. That's very innovative.
Yeah. We was in China when you couldn't fly to China. So we used to have to fly into Hong Kong, get a train into China with our interpreters. This was in the 90s when, before China had opened up to the rest of the world. And that's when we really benefited, rather than China's it's not so cheap now.
That's right. Yeah. And is that one of your key elements of success, that you were the first ones to do some of these things? You were one of the first families to get into retail in a big way in the 70s, and you're one of the first ones to get into China for importing. Is that a key to success, you think, being first? Yeah,
what we would do is the goods what we was importing originally were from India and Pakistan. And in Pakistan they wouldn't touch pigskin for religious reasons, but the Chinese would. So that's why we went to China. They've got pigskin and they'll make the jackets. And there was a big margin difference because China wasn't exporting to the rest of the world at the time. So it was, I think it was just taking the chance to see if it works, and you'd go to China to see if it works, and it worked. Yeah.
That's tremendous. Looking back, that's quite an incredible story. And it shows a lot of innovation and being able to take a calculated risk. And from there, from retail, you've now become a very large property portfolio. Is that right?
Yeah, what happened with the shops is where most retailers would rent shops, we used to buy the properties through the turnover. So eventually the property portfolio was worth more by default, really. Yes. We could say it was a plan, but but the plan works because we bought the properties rather than renting.
Yes.
So we ended up with properties around the whole country, and some of them we had very good relationships with Boots, who've got 1,500 shops around the country. So and they're based in Nottingham. So we ended up quite a lot of their shops, and some of them were quite big. And then they ended up in prime positions. And then we converted some of them into nice apartments, and they were worth more than what we was doing from the retail. So the business slowly went to more and more towards property.
It evolved into property. And was it a time when you decided to make that switch? Was it just a natural progression? Was it a business plan, or was it something that happened over time?
When we told all the people who we was doing business with that we was now going to switch next year completely out of level, nobody believed us. They said, "There's no way that you're going to leave this business." And and we wasn't. We was sure in our minds that we was making the right decision, and we did it, and that was probably 15 years ago.
Was there any sadness in you when you made that decision, because you started from retail, that was part of your history, and what made you? Did you feel any emotional connection?
The emotional, but we've made a lot of friends around the world, who. And we're still in touch with some in Pakistan, some in India, and quite a few in Italy who we did business with as friends. When it's Eid, we always send them a message. In Italy, because we spend a lot of time there, we go to their weddings, they come to our weddings. We've become very close. But otherwise, it was just business.
Yes, so, that's great. And in terms of the property business, property seems to be a very safe and, if I can put it out, there's an easier type of business. Is that right? Is it easy to accumulate wealth through property?
I don't think. I think you've got to accumulate serious wealth. You have to be quite sophisticated. If you're buying 30 terrace houses and you're just relying on the price increase and the growth, I find it hard to understand how, as a long term, that you get. It's a lot to look after for the benefits what you get. Our business is a little bit more complex than that. We're looking at developments which are more for the blue chip companies rather than with the residential.
And you have your own construction arm?
We've got our own construction company, which has we only build for ourselves, for our own development company. But we've done projects, with a lot of household names, and that, having done that now, we built a reputation that we can produce the right product.
And for people starting out, perhaps, who are in the process of building a property portfolio, property business, what sort of pointers or advice would you give?
Know your market. Don't look at somebody else and think he's doing student accommodation, or he's doing flats, or he's building houses, or know your own market, because it's a little bit more complex to do it at the right level. Otherwise, you just become another person with 5 houses, or
Yes.
and I think there's a lot of red tape now for small property portfolios, and I think the government are making it more and more difficult for them
To try and control house prices and so on. And you've kept a lot of your investments very close to home, here in your hometown of Nottingham. A lot of your portfolio is based in this area.
We concentrate on what we call NG1, which is the Nottingham city centre. But that's because of the amount of opportunities what come to us. Because we're based our head office is in Nottingham, but we're doing stuff in Sheffield and Derby and Lincolnshire and Yorkshire and Wales. So it's but we just got a bigger profile in Nottingham.
Just to give an idea of the size of BSP Holdings, it's a very substantial company. Is it? Have you placed a value? Have you had a valuation done of the company, or is that something you considered? I know. And one thing I would like to add is that you're a very modest individual, and we've had to really work to get this interview today because you're very modest and you don't like to, for sake of using other words, to show off like some people might. But are you prepared to tell us as to the sort of net value or the present worth of the business?
I wouldn't like to go down that road, but we're very well established in the Midlands. We would, we've got 40 head office staff and probably 200 staff out doing the development work. I think it's not in our nature to put out the figure. A lot of people like to go into the Asian rich list, and sometimes it comes in high, sometimes it comes in low. I prefer not to, as a family, we prefer not to be there. So.
And this modesty, where does it come from, Paul? Because you're quite a modest and very grounded individual and down to earth. You're not extravagant or over the top.
If you probably had have asked the question when I was 25, 30 years old, I might have answered it. As you get older and you see people go up and down, and you realise if it's in your nature and you're thick-skinned, you might want to put a figure out there, and then if things are not going so well, you wish you hadn't said that. Yes. And I see that all the time. I see sort of people put figures out, and people think, well, I thought it was worth more than that. And then you put a figure out, and you think, I don't think he's worth that much. Yes. So, it's for us, it's not important. It's not important.
That's great. Yeah. And you've taken a lesser role in the business now because you've worked for 40 years. Is that right? Has it been longer?
Yeah, well, the time's gone quickly, but also because I would say because we've enjoyed what we've been doing. It's not. I've never felt that I've been working for 40 years.
Yes.
We've been, we've met some wonderful people. We've got, we're still friends. Been with a lot of the people who we don't even do business with now. With the internet and Wi-Fi and everything else, you can keep in touch quite easily.
That's right. But you've taken a lesser role in the company, in the business.
For the last.
Are you semi-retired now?
I would like to say I'm semi-retired. Yes. I have been for quite a few years.
But is it easy to do that? Have you been able to let go? Because it's a company that you started off and built up. Is it hard to let go?
I think it's hard to not be involved because it's quite exciting. That's the rest of it is. I do still like to go in when we've got a meeting with somebody who I like. Or who's good fun and funny, yes. Whether he's a lawyer or a surveyor or just a friend, Yes. Which is a good position to be in.
That's great. Yeah. And looking ahead to the future, what are your plans for the future?
For the business, we're doing a lot of planning so that the next generation and the generation after that can benefit from what we've built. So we're putting structures in place, and so hopefully that can, it can carry on, for 50, 100 years.
And you're personally involved in a lot of charity work. You've done a lot of charity work in the past, locally, and in Italy as well, when you worked there. But recently you've started a new project in Amritsar, in the Punjab. Can you tell us about that?
We've started a project with there's about 6 different people involved in number. So we're creating a school for young girls so that we can teach them a a trade. It's probably, it might diversify, but it's going to start off as probably 30 sewing machines, and we're going to teach them how to sew clothes. They can take the clothes home with them when they're finished, and hopefully they've got a trade then what they can take away and make a living from. Yeah, so.
That's tremendous. How important is it for any business, any successful business, to give back and do some charity work?
I think when I was first introduced to putting some effort back into the community, it's easy for us because we're Sikhs, because we've been, it's part of our culture. So so it wasn't difficult to get involved. I can remember doing a little bit of seva in Pakistan with my brother David once. We just fed some homeless people, and it cost about £50. I'm talking about 30 years ago. It was a fantastic experience for when you see people who are hungry. Yes. And that's sort of lived with us for. So if you're fortunate enough, you should be grateful that you can give something back. The feel good factor from it, as you probably know,
yes,
is amazing.
Absolutely, it's very satisfying. And the world has changed so much. We spoke earlier how the business world, and generally lifestyles and expectations have changed so much. I mean, are you comfortable with all the changes that are now with us, changes with the online world and in family relationships as well, because people have less and less time for each other? And, I can remember also growing up in the 70s and 80s, and we spent a lot more time together as families, but now everybody's so busy and got so much going on. What do you think about all the change that's occurred, and the world seems to be going faster and faster?
I think there's lots of negatives. You've only got to sit at an airport lounge and you won't see anybody talking to each other. Everybody's into the phones, either playing games or texting or emailing or whatever they're doing. So there's lots of negative sides, but there's also an unbelievable amount of positives. Like, you want to know anything about Sikhism now, what you don't know, it takes you 30 seconds to find out.
That's right.
As an example, or keeping in touch with somebody who was now not living in Nottingham, now living in Canada.
It's become free via WhatsApp.
Exactly. So, so the world's become smaller. So there is massive benefits of keeping in touch with family, friends around the world. And then as a result, you end up making an effort to go, so, well, why don't you come over? Or you go over yourself. So there's lots of benefits as well. But I think as we speak, a lot of the regulators are now stepping in, because I think a lot of the companies had overstepped the mark a little bit. The big companies like Google and stuff like that. So I think they're going to get reined in a little bit, which is a good thing, I think.
So there's an issue with privacy and information. They seem to know too much about us.
Yeah. Facebook, as we speak, is being looked into. So I think they're getting all right, which is a good thing. Yeah.
There could be a backlash, really, against too much technology.
Yeah.
There can be too much of a good thing. And looking forward, in terms of business and mentoring, would you like to become a mentor and help other people come through, not just necessarily in business, but in careers and life generally, because you've had a lot of different experiences? Do you think you've got a lot to offer in terms of your life experience?
I think I've done a little bit of mentoring already, a little bit with family, and quite often with, as a family, we're fortunate because if I've got something which I need to bounce off, I go straight to my brothers or vice versa. And so it's easy for us. When you've got friends who have got big businesses and they're on their own, sometimes, quite often I'll get a phone call saying, you got 5 minutes, and it would be something, they want an opinion if they're doing something which is, what do you think, is this going to be okay or not, or what would you do? So you do a lot of that even with people who have got big businesses, and sometimes we do it, take advice. It's only like taking advice from a lawyer or an accountant. So mentoring is good, but I think it's important for people who have mentors to make sure that in the end they make their own decisions, because what's right for them might not be what the mentor is probably saying. So.
Family's played a big part in your business success. It's been a family business, but also your wife. How important has your relationship with your wife and your marriage, how important has that been in your success?
I think a stable home life is probably very important in all businesses, and I think in our community it's probably a big advantage because the wives will look after the kids and take them to school, and while the husbands are out doing probably more hours than what would be normally standard in the olden days. Probably doesn't happen so much now because in the next generation you don't see that because they're a bit more 9 to 5. But from our age group, I think that was a big reason why Sikhs in the UK have done so well, because the work ethic and the family ethic was combined, and it worked well.
But is that also changing, do you think, the work ethic in the younger generation? Is it?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think they now. I mean, me and my wife and the brothers, sisters, we're like first generation over here. We're now talking about second and third generation. So they're more and more westernised. But then India's getting quite westernised as well. So the world becomes smaller. So.
The world is changing.
Yeah.
Paul Singh, BSP Holdings, Nottingham, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For sharing your thoughts with us, and you've had a very varied and a very extensive business experience in your life as a retailer and now as a property portfolio business. And I think what comes out of it for me is that you're extremely grounded, you're very sincere, humble, and I think these qualities have probably been part of the reason for your success and why you've been able to do so well in life and really maintain that success as well. Because some people do achieve success, but they can't maintain it. And I'd like to invite you to take part in some mentoring with the Sikh channel in the future. We intend to start a mentoring program for senior business leaders like yourself from around the world. And I think you'll be a great role model and people can really learn from your experiences.
Thank you. Yeah.
Particularly with the Sikh ethos of Nimrata, having humility and being humble. And that's very much evident in the way you conduct yourself. So thank you very much for joining Sikh channel and sharing your views and thoughts and telling us about your life and inviting us into your home today. It's been lovely to meet your wife as well. It's been very, very hospitable and very kind to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.